Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. We were just talking to our Instagram viewers, the few that we have, because it's on my personal Instagram. But nonetheless, I encourage everybody to join us on Facebook or Instagram. I promise it's the same conversation. It doesn't change. Nonetheless, we have a very interesting conversation today. It's about, partly, I think it's going to take up a fair bit of the show. It's about the mid-year report that came out and some interesting statistics that came out that I think paint a very different picture from this roses and dandelions and daisies that the government media keeps pushing out.
You mean the mid-year report of production?
Yes. Right. Well, it came out from Ministry of Finance mid-year report. Sorry, I didn't have the bring up what exactly it is. Nonetheless, it was their mid-year report. I think on our GDP, on our economic status. Mm-hmm. All right. So it'll be an interesting conversation based on that one or two excerpts that we have from there. Nonetheless, what I would first like to start with is something that people every single day. I've been having more and more people get on board with Anug. If you go onto my personal social media, you see how many people are getting on board. The conversation has changed. I think people have really reached the point of APNU have tried to rig the elections and are incompetent and we don't trust them. And then PPP are corrupt and favoritism and bullyism and honestly poor economic policies and all this money in this country and nobody's seeing it other than the politicians, obviously. And I think people are really getting fed up now. I think it's hard to hide from although they try to mask it behind these headlines of fastest growing GDP in the world and billions of dollars into this and that project, like black belly I keep talking about black belly sheep because I think it's the biggest joke in this country. Anyways, how much billions of dollars spent on all this nonsense when in actual fact the people aren't feeling it. I mean, we produce rice in this country and a 10 kg bag is almost 3,000 Guyana dollars right now. The people out there are feeling it. Where is the 7.6 million US dollars per day that the government is getting, and how is it not benefiting the people? It doesn't make sense. All they're doing is showing which road they're building, which road is more garbage than which road going over budget, which road taking too long, and the people aren't benefiting. All you're seeing is them screaming progress because we build a road. Other than that, the teachers are in turmoil, the nurses are in turmoil, the police are still corrupt. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So the duties on vehicles are still through the roof. PAY is ridiculous. VAT is too high. I mean, where have the people benefited?
You got a serious list of complaints there, Kian. I hope we're going to focus on a couple and talk about some solutions to them. You see, but I know that we say it over and over, and I'm going to say it again. Our conversation is it's directed at the minority of Guyanese who have recognized the problems inherent with two race-based parties and have moved away from that. Mm-hmm. Good. So the conversation then, if we are going to be loyal to the ethic that minority group represents, the conversation has got to be about identifying where there's a problem and pointing out where the solution to that problem is, so that intelligent core base of people who have had enough of the two ethnic-based parties and have moved away from ethnic politics can decide, as a question of policy, as a question of doctrine, if they agree with what we're talking about, if they don't. Mm-hmm. You see, I think that core group, they're not blindly looking for leaders that they can look up to some kind of deity and say, the best economic person in the world and that kind of foolishness. They kind of want representation where they hear a point of view and they can discuss it informatively with a sounding board so that we all agree that we've reached a consensus, we've reached a position that we can work with, that there is light at the end of the tunnel and there are solutions presented. Not just that we're saying, oh, how terrible it is. Francis Bailey did a really good thing. We mentioned him last week. We mentioned him a lot these days.
He's fantastic.
He did an excellent program talking about the state of roads. Yeah. And he was pointing out the defects in the construction and that kind of thing. He did the road over the over the river. He did Cemetery Road. Mm-hmm. Excellent work, simply because he brought a picture to the conversation. People were able to see what was going on rather than just talk about it. And it's really hard to refute a picture. It's really hard to say a picture is lying.
To the point where the government actually came out to respond to his criticisms.
Right. So he points out a problem. What's the source of that problem and how do we fix it? And I think that if we're speaking to our folk want to have that conversation. They know the road is crap. They know that if $100 is awarded on a contract, $20 will go to various corrupt authorities, $20 will go to somebody else's pocket, and then $60 will go for the road. And they know that that's not how it should be. So how do we fix that? How do we sort that out? And that's what I think conversations need to be about.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's practical, it's direct, and often, and I think I am very guilty of this. I mean, you yell at me all the time about it. I come on here and I just kind of gaff. I know that I often sound like a stuck record. I often get, don't necessarily portray the points that I need to make properly, but
I won't go that far, but no, certainly not. You're the one who points out the problems and you do discuss solutions. So don't go and take that on. But because of who our audience is, there's so much noise. 90% of the people listening to you are listening to you not to reach the truth and not to have a consensus and not to have a discussion, but to cut you down. The instinct is to respond to that with fighting fire by fire.
Right.
But that doesn't move anyone forward. And all it does really is acknowledge the apologists from both sides who are coming with only one intention, which is to create red herrings, to distract, and to move away from the truth. And we got to stick to the truth.
That's the key here. And this is what, again, the third party is for. And we try to explain this to people more and more. The reality of what we're trying to create is a balance between the PPP and the PNC. What we've learned after all of our time since independence, 58 years, is that this winner take all, this one party ruling and no one else having a say, just leads to corruption, just leads to poor management, poor economic policy, no continuity in our economic progress. And we're realizing that Guyana gets left behind every time. And again, most importantly, probably accountability. At the end of the day, nobody knows where anything is being spent. Nobody gets a chance to check the records. It's only until another party goes in and then, they have the hullabaloo and everybody's paraded as, like they're going to be locked up in handcuffs, and then nothing comes of it. We know the game, and I think Guyanese themselves have realized now that these two parties are exactly the same. The PPP and the PNC are no different from each other. They both are corrupt. They both, at the end of the day, have incompetent people and very capable people that are part of their organization, but at the same time are looking out for their party members before they look out for Guyanese in general. And I think that is where we have now realized that there has to be more people sitting at the table in the decision-making process.
There you go. So let's look at examples. In fact, let's use Francis Bailey's example. You have the government that decides we're going to build a road. You see, the award of contracts is very important. It's very lucrative for everybody, including government officials. When you say we're going to build a road, that's what the government is supposed to do. And therefore, immediately, the government supporters, the government apologists say, wonderful, our government is doing great things. That's what the government's supposed to do. And indeed, government who builds a road properly monitored, properly constructed, proper oversight, heading in the proper direction, is doing its job well. So it looks good. But look how this works. The government has appointed its own people to decide how the procurement system for this contract works. So I appoint my friend KIAN. I'm government, I appoint my friend KIAN. He's the man now who decides how to invite bids for the contracts. And I say to KIAN, hey, we're building a road. We've just told our supporters we're building a road. It's a lovely project. Everybody's excited about it. Go and give the contract. Do your thing. But make sure at the end of the day, you give the contract to Harry. KIAN is my friend. He's not going to tell me no. So he says, all right.
I'm not going to tell you no. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job.
You're afraid you're going to lose your job?
Yeah.
And then he says, all right, so 300,000 to Harry. I said, no, man, not 300,000. Give Harry the contract for 600,000.
Right.
So Harry gets the contract for 600,000 to build this $300 road. I know. I already talked to Harry. Harry giving me 200,000. KIAN vexed because KIAN's been asked to do a dishonest thing. So KIAN already talked to Harry quietly, and Harry giving him a 50,000. Harry now upset too. So Harry decide he not paying 300,000 to give you $300,000 road. If the road has to spend $50,000 for asphalt, Harry only spending $25,000.
$10,000.
So if you want 6 inches of asphalt,
You're getting 2.
you're getting 2 inches
Right.
of asphalt.
Exactly.
That's how it works. But
Correct.
for Harry to do that, Harry got to get the engineer who is supposed to review and make sure
He got to get braced up.
He got to get a
For
brace.
say 6. Uh-huh.
So you read in the newspapers, government is building a road. And the apologists, the government supporters say, good job. Well done. Good initiative. The engineer happy, the government happy, the contractor happy, KIAN happy, I happy, because everybody's got a cutback. But what happens at the end of the day is that your road that should cost $300 and should have 2 layers of asphalt, and check, Google it. A public road, a road that deals with traffic, should have 2 layers of asphalt, each layer being at least 2.5 inches thick. You will get a road that got a layer of asphalt like this, 1 inch thick. Now, for those of you who don't believe me, I challenge you to drive down the East Coast public road, pass by Sparndam, pass in some other places. You will see that the top surface has disintegrated. It's lost its structural integrity. And underneath that top surface, in some areas of that pothole, you have a 2-inch pothole, because underneath that, there is the second layer of asphalt. They do it that way, first of all, for the strength, but second of all, because when you do lose the structural integrity, it's easy to fix the thing. It's just a 2-inch. And then I want you to look at the railway embankment road, which now is about 60% patches, even though a road is supposed to last without any maintenance for 15 years or more. There's already 60% patches. And look and see what the trucks have done to that road. And where you see a hole in that road, you of yourself measure how thick the asphalt is. And you will see 1 inch of asphalt, and underneath that you will see sand and loam. So I challenge you, go and do that. And tell me that I'm wrong and I'm lying. And tell me that every single contract on the railway embankment road to fix this patch, to patch this, to fix this, to correct that, contracts necessitated because the road was poorly built in the first place using 1 inch of asphalt. Tell me that I'm wrong. And then ask yourself, when this road, the contract was given, and the engineer was hired to say, make sure the contractor does the job well. And then we get a road like this, and we hear the government saying, you can't drive heavy trucks on the bridges because the bridge is breaking down. Why the bridge is breaking down? Possibly because they weren't built well in the first place. Or you hear the government saying, trucks must now not use the embankment road, they got to use the public road. And you say, a road is a road. Why is it that a truck can't use a main artery of the East Coast along the railway embankment? Because the road wasn't built well. Why wasn't the road built well? Because somebody got a kickback. Either the design was bad, the engineer didn't do his job, or the contractor was stingy in his materials and his construction process. But that is the exact example of government saying, wave your flags, I'm building a road. But behind the scenes, although everybody is saying, well done, Mr. President, the kickbacks are happening. We have to be more careful to scrutinize, and we have to understand our systems. So that's how the corruption happens. Now, how to stop it? The way to stop it is legislation that does not allow me to make KIAN the person who is in charge of procurement. Right now, the legislation gives the government the power to appoint the majority of the people on the commission who approve the contract. A simple change to that legislation to mandate 3 PPP members, 3 PNC members, and 1 third-party member would immediately mean that I can no longer call the minister, or any government official can no longer call the people that the government appointed to say, y'all give the contract to Harry. Because the PNC folk in the room will not allow that to happen. It's so simple, and it is so effective, it will immediately have results. So we identify the problem, bad roads, bad construction, Bailey talking about it all the time. We identify the source of the problem. The government is appointing the people who are awarding the contracts, deciding how much, deciding who gets the contracts, and we have the solution. One small change in the legislation to ensure that the 6 people who are overseeing the award of contracts include 3 opposition, and then a 7th who is the third party. problem solved.
Agreed. I will be back here next week with a whiteboard, okay? Because this is I know a lot of you sit down there and piecing it together, but it's what's sad about having to explain these kinds of things is that it sounds like so much information, but it is so simple. It's so straightforward. It's so basic. And people believe that this is some elaborate scheme of corruption that's hard to pinpoint or show up. And it really is as clear as day. A man is being paid to do something and doing half the work and then giving a piece of the money back to the man that gave him the job. I mean, that's all. That's all it is. Right? And the reason that can happen is, again, because there's one political party or one person in that political party making all the decisions, and because that person has no accountability, they're just allowing it to happen. And there's no oversight, there's nobody sitting there saying, no, that's not allowed to happen. And because of that, it just continues. So the corruption is systemic. And I keep telling people this. I watch a lot of comments here. The PVP have really sent the trolls out today. Somebody just asked me for evidence of corruption, and I just want to respond quickly that I don't think I need to give any more evidence. I think the Americans have enough evidence, as you can tell by their actions and sanctions. Nonetheless, what I do want to say is,
but again, you're not talking to those people.
No, we're not talking to those people.
Those are not the people who
I know.
So they can happily be ignored.
They are being ignored.
And they will, what Bob Marley says, they think they're in heaven, but I think in their quiet moments they really have to ask themselves,
and I think,
are they messengers of the truth?
They don't care about that. These are fake accounts and they're getting paid to do it.
No, but someone is behind the fake account, and in that person's quiet moment, all by themselves when no one's looking, are you in heaven or are you in hell?
Partner, take 2 seconds. You don't understand how these PVP and PNC people are indoctrinated. From birth. They don't know any different. Is a religion, is a cult. These people do not even know that they're suffering. They don't know how bad. They really believe. And not only that, it's always my favorite part. I always say there's only one thing that has more effect than fear, and it's hope. And they go to all their PYO meetings. They go to all the PNC meetings, and every single time their leaders look at them and say, trust me, it will get better. And they've been doing it for 50 years and they're still suffering, but they believe it will get better. Because what is coupled with that ridiculous notion of things might get better is the fear is then driven into them. But trust me, it ain't as bad as the PNC. Trust me, it ain't as bad as the PVP.
We're better than
so it's a well-oiled machine of brainwashing. And these poor people in every context, poor people, I feel bad for them because they're the reason the country is not moving forward, and they sit down there and they do it to their children. And I always wonder to myself, I always bother, because I sit here and I say, much like yourself, much like all of us are there, the least we can do in life is what's best for our children, okay? And I sit there and I say, why would you want your child to grow up in this kind of environment? Why would you want... I actually have a comment to make on that just before we jump back on track. I've been noticing a lot lately people coming to me with very interesting situations, just various scenarios out there. And what has occurred to me is how many people do not understand how bad things are until they become victims of the system. They have not taken themselves 2 seconds to say, oh geez, if my child get knocked down by a drunk driver, that's part of the PPP, what happens then? How do I get justice? If my child gets raped by somebody a big one, what do I do? If a big minister, somebody living next door to me and I try to run my business and they bring the authorities to shut me down, what do I do? And the people cannot register yet that they have no power until they really realize they have no power. And something as simple as, and I hope this one can jar you into like understanding. You know, when you be driving down the road in rush hour right now in traffic in 8 o'clock in the morning, and some idiot minister who ain't in no emergency rush is come with the lights blaring behind you, and you is gonna move aside and you gotta drop your child to school. I'm sorry, if you don't realize by that point, holy crap, these people don't care about us at all. I don't know what to tell you. How do you not realize that you are a second-class citizen and these people work for you and are treating you like that?
one of the central things that we need to talk about, and I know we're going to get there, is use of roads and abuse of roads, both by ordinary drivers and by the police, the ambulance drivers, the fire trucks. I've seen, the fire service have these pickups now, right?
Yeah.
I've seen one of them sirens blaring, tearing down the road to turn into a gas station, turn off the sirens and go about the business.
Yeah.
Now, abuse like that is one of the things that frustrates road users to the extent, and a frustrated road user is one who is going to vent his rage by driving recklessly. So we do need to have a holistic conversation about road use, about safety on the road, and what is causing the death toll and the rate of accidents that we're seeing.
Right.
And that's a big part of it. I agree with you.
Yeah, you put me in a spot there because I really want to bring up this conversation, but that I think is a more important conversation that everyone in this country is affected by.
Well, let me get you the background. The lawyer in me is
Go for
bothered
it.
by it.
Go for it.
You have a responsibility to drive safely on the road and obey the rules of the road. You got to stop at the red light. You got to stay in your lane. Most of us don't do it. You got to pull over to the corner, slow down if somebody's overtaking you. You can't exceed the speed limit. All of those nice things. Let us drive on the left-hand side of the road. All those nice things that's supposed to get you safely to work and safely back home. If you don't, you're driving dangerously, and that's an offense, and you can be charged. But there are emergencies. So, if a policeman is in hot pursuit of a criminal, that's an emergency. If a fireman is going to put out a fire, well, if it's my house, I expect that man to speed. So that's an emergency. And because the system recognizes that emergencies come up, if an ambulance is taking a dying person to the hospital, it's an emergency. In an emergency, you can drive dangerously. To avoid or to minimize the dangers inherent in driving dangerously.
Loud noise and bright lights.
You put on sirens and you put on loud noises. Good. That makes it safe.
Everybody's aware.
You're still driving dangerously. And the law says, as part of our obligation rule of the road, when we hear these people coming who are driving in an emergency, we must forget that we have a right under the Constitution to travel freely in Guyana without let or hindrance. We must forget that, and we must move over to the side of the road and be hindered so that they can proceed, thus making it safer for them, they having created the dangerous situation. When that fire truck driver, and I've seen army people do it, I've seen police do it, tear down the road, driving dangerously, forcing you to the side of the road, and there's no emergency, they're committing an offense. Because they do not have the excuse of saying there's an emergency and therefore my dangerous driving is justified.
Yeah.
They're also infringing your right as an equal Guyanese to move about freely in the country because they're making you pull over to the side of the road.
Yeah.
We need to insist that all of those vehicles that are authorized to be carrying sirens have black boxes so that as soon as their siren goes on, they flip that switch in that car.
Yeah, it's tracked.
An alarm goes
a record
off
is
back
made.
at the station, back at the headquarters, and then they have to fill out a written report as to what the emergency was, where they were, and how they went to meet the emergency.
It's called accountability.
And you know something? If that's done, you wouldn't see any more sirens on the road. Because trust me, when you drive in Trinidad, you drive in Barbados, you drive anywhere else, it's few and far between that you hear any siren on the road. But I guarantee you, in Guyana, driving to work along the East Coast, you'll hear 4 every morning and 4 every afternoon. That's not, we are oppressed. So your PPP apologists may want to say something
No.
But
You solved a problem. So let's start with a simple one. For all of you out there, I just like to repeat what you said I guess in a different, summarized version. For all of you out there that didn't understand completely what Tim's solution was here, is that all these police cars and army vehicles and ambulances that you guys see flying down the road that are going nowhere, going to pick up lunch, going to the gas station, just trying to get to this sweet woman house. I don't care.
Children to school.
Yeah. So all of those people that are abusing that power. All Tim is saying that we should do is they should put a tracker in the car, which again is something very common everywhere in the world. And when they click that button to turn on the lights and the siren, which means there's an emergency, a record is sent to the police station And the police then, the command center, will then radio and say, what is your emergency? And when they get back to the police station after, they have to write a report to say, we had XYZ emergency. This is why we had to put on our siren.
We drove from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And this is the emergency. This is the fire we put out.
Yes. So it's a very simple scenario. And then all of a sudden, if they don't do that, then they're reprimanded. Now,
if they don't do that, they're driving dangerously.
And they can be charged for all we care.
I would change the legislation to make it an assumption that if they put on that siren and there's no just excuse, that is dangerous driving.
Yeah.
And let them prove that they were not driving dangerous.
Absolutely.
And you charge them and you take away their license or you dock points from the license. However, that system has to be changed as well.
And just so you guys know, we earn approximately $7.6 million US per day from our oil right now. It would take maybe in that case about 6 hours of income to outfit all of the vehicles with this thing. So because that's how much money we make. Okay. So in 6 hours of our oil money, we could outfit every single police car in this country with this technology.
Less than 6 hours. It's a couple $100,000 you're talking about.
You know what? Less than 6 hours. So just to give you guys an understanding, where is the money? Now, I'm also going to speak about something that I know is going to carry the conversation even further. And I'm a very strong advocate for this. Now, we have not only a problem with police cars and ambulances and blah, blah, and emergency vehicles and minister vehicles and government vehicles blaring lights and flying down the road. We have big problems with minibuses and trucks and taxis and just everyday drivers that are recklessly driving. Now, my position on this, okay, and this is where I think it starts to solve the problem, is the reason that people are emboldened and feel that they can do this, feel confident enough to run a red light, to drive drunk, is because of how corrupt our police force is. Okay? Now, the first thing is, I will be the first to say, all the rules exist. There are penalties. Granted, maybe they can be strengthened or made a little bit more severe. There are rules to every single law when it comes to road usage. Speeding, ticketed, suspended license, impound vehicle, every single, you drive drunk, blah, 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 there is punishment for it. Now, why is no one punished? Because the minute you get stopped from running through that, the minute the minibus fly through that red light and the police car pulls him over, he's take $5,000 out of the pocket and he's getting a policeman and say, man, don't worry with this, let me go on. He continues to drive 100 miles an hour, flying through every other traffic light, hoping for the best, right? In his world, he makes more money flying through traffic than the amount of $5,000 he's got to pay policemen. Now, again, if we have no rules on the road, if we have a lawless system, if we have police that are corrupt, then there is no way for us to enforce any of these rules, and people will continue to break them and die on the road. Now, how do we stop police corruption? And I always point out 3 simple things. First thing is you need to train them better. You need to make sure you pay them better. You need to give them benefits for them and their family. Okay? And that automatically will then boost the confidence they have in their job, their respect for their job. They will not be as inclined to take bribes. That will also include hiring better quality people, because it's now a job that they can do honestly and sustainably to survive for them and their families. So you'll hire better people automatically. Now, these are just 3 of the steps that, if you ask me, will help reduce road deaths in this country, okay, which is our biggest epidemic. That's my solution to how to start this. I'm going to let you, comment on what I said and what you feel.
The problem that we have with corruption at that level is that it's endemic. It is a culture that exists throughout. So customs, almost everywhere you look. If you want something done fast, almost anywhere in any institution, if you know someone or pay something, you get the wheels greased faster. The solution to that has got to be that the job is the kind of job that you're afraid to lose. So as you say, you have to pay people. If you don't pay people, you will get the worst. You will scrape the bottom of the barrel to be getting people to do the job. And I think that if you instill that respectability in the force, that they're earning a living that they're proud of, that they can look after their families and they can pay for that car. I think that by doing that, they then become careful, first of all, to do their job. You attract a better quality of people, as you said, but they're more careful to avoid breaking the rules because of fear of losing the job. Mm-hmm. You know, we got a stupid law in Guyana about tint on vehicles. The law is stupid because it shouldn't be there. Nobody obeys it. But when you look to see who the culprits are, the vehicles that have tint in Guyana are all economy, 1500cc, mm-hmm. Carinas, Coronas, Corollas, that kind of thing. All driven by young police, mm-hmm. army folk, various public servants who know the police. It's all part of a system where I know somebody, or I am on the force, and therefore I am invulnerable to prosecution, because if somebody stops me, I say, man, I make a call. This person. So if the main culprits are the same police who should be enforcing it, you have a problem. Mm-hmm. And if you drive past any police station and you look in at the cars there, you will see every last one is tinted. All the privately owned cars, the cars that are owned privately by police that should not have tint, are tinted. If we are so rotten that the people who should be enforcing the law recognize the stupidity in the law, but then are not afraid to break the law. If they were earning a good salary and they cherish their job, even if the law is stupid, mm-hmm. they would be obeying the law. But to be able to drive into the police station where you work with an unlawfully tinted car,
right,
that says so much about our society. It's there all over.
Yeah. All right. We spoke a little bit about road issues and our solutions. I'm going to jump topics now because I think this is very, very important for and the PPP what you call them, extremists are not going to completely understand. But I'm gonna ask Robbie, please bring up this piece of a chart from the mid-year report, which is a very interesting bit of information. So on this report,
we've gone to economics.
Just to kind of start this conversation, because I think there's a lot of disinformation out there. I think there's a lot of headlines that have been made unjustly and, to be honest, in my opinion, downright lie. And I'm going to talk about this chart for 2 seconds. I'm not going to take long because I know it gets a little, it's a lot of information. But nonetheless, what it says is the mid-year real sector share of GDP. So what it's basically showing is that every industry, if you look at the 2023 column and the 2024 column, which is the far right column, it shows that every single industry outside of the oil and gas industry has shrunk in their share of the GDP. Okay, so you see sugar, rice, other crops, livestock, everything has decreased. All right, forestry has stayed the same. That's an interesting one we're going to talk about. Fishing has gone down. Bauxite has shrunk. Gold has severely shrunk to almost half. Oil and gas has grown from 86% to 76%. And then
the other way around, I think, right?
Sorry, 68%. Sorry, my bad. Grew from 68% to 76%. And then you go down to services and you see that there are some certain interesting areas. For example, hotels, I think, is what I had seen here, food and beverage and so on, that had grown or at least stabilized. Now, what this chart is showing you is that the Dutch disease is relevant and prevalent at the moment. Now, let me be very clear, because I did take some flack for this because I didn't explain it properly. Robbie, could come back. I didn't explain it properly in my personal Facebook post. What was said by myself is that the industries have shrunk. All right. And that's not necessarily true. I will state that that's not necessarily true because that chart doesn't prove that. Right. There are industries that have excelled, for example, hotels and food and beverage. Right.
That have grown.
And what that chart showed is that oil and gas has taken a larger percent of our GDP, meaning our economy is more is more based on our oil and gas money. We rely on it more. It is what's propping our economy up. It's where we get most of our money from now.
Well, maybe you could define the Dutch curse, because you use the expression, and
yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important to understand that when you have something like oil that comes along that is totally revolutionary as far as your economy is concerned, the danger that it's a wonderful thing, we get free money. Look how much we're getting.
Yeah.
But the danger that arises is that if you're dependent on that specific source of income develops to such an extent and to the exclusion of everything else that all the other industries die or wither, you run into a real problem, because if that industry suddenly goes south, you're bankrupt.
Yeah, if oil price drops.
Yeah. And if the industry allows prices, if it drives prices up, as we see prices are going up in Guyana, the people who are in the other industries, who are making the same amount of money that they were making before, they find themselves in poverty. So there has to be a way to level the income structure and to ensure that the benefit we're getting from the free oil money is used to augment growth in the other economic areas. If you don't do that, then you will find that the other areas are withering, as many of them are, but that absolute dependence on oil is harmful in itself, because remember, there's only a small number of people can be employed directly in the oil industry. It puts a lot of money in government coffers, but that so far has only been helping the government. So that money needs as a priority to be applied to improve the situation in the other industries.
Correct.
So that the other industries can grow. And the only test of it being done well is when you see growth in areas rice, sugar. Well, let's talk about sugar.
No, but let's hit one.
Gold,
let's hit one. Let's focus on gold for a second.
Timber.
Yeah, okay. I like to focus on gold, because gold is the natural resource that has kept this country propped up for our history.
No, well, since the decline of sugar, it was sugar.
Yeah, many moons ago.
A couple of years ago, gold for the first time brought in more revenue than sugar. But yeah, let's talk about
gold. But when we talk about when we talk about money in the hands of the population, it was gold. It wasn't sugar, right? Sugar maybe brought more money into the coffers for the government, but gold put more money in the citizens' hands. There's more miners making more money mining than there were sugar workers making money, crafting sugar.
I can go with that.
Right? So what we had found is Robbie, I can ask you to bring up the gold headline. This headline was from a couple weeks ago, as you can see, June 4th. And it says that Guyana's gold declarations fall from 641,000 ounces to 432 ounces in 5 years. Now, if that's from a 2024 report, it means it started around 2019, obviously. Okay? Now, what's interesting about this scenario is we have the government continuously putting up headlines. I think the last headline was a 12% growth in non-oil sector economy. And yet we have one of our biggest industries, which is gold, on a humongous decline. Now, what I found interesting about the conversation about the declining industries was that the government was relying on industries like timber and hotels and restaurants and one other one. I can't remember what it was. But what it was... Construction. What they were showing was that these sectors are not oil, but are booming. What they did not say to the people is that those sectors are booming from oil business spin-off. So, for example, the hotels. Our hotels would be empty if it wasn't for oil workers. Right? The timber, for example, would not be anywhere near what it is right now if it wasn't for the money that the oil industry has injected for construction. So what they are not being truthful about is that even the sectors that are growing are still dependent on the oil. All right? And that is what I think needs to be, because, sorry, Robbie, bring up just the one more, the fish. I just want to show one more one, just to prove again. This is a report. It says in 2021, the report states, bear in mind the PPP came in 2020, the report states that fishing sector had mixed output, which ultimately resulted in a 6.6 decline. The year 2022 is yield declines relative to 2021. Now that continued to decline even into 2024. Now what I'm showing here is a pattern that the industries outside that have nothing to do with oil are declining. And they're not stating that. Even down to rice. Rice right now, again, produced right here. Why is it $3,000 for a 10 kg bag?
Well, that goes to price rather than production. But rice has been relatively level in the last 10 years, let's say. They've been, troughs and highs. But on the whole, it's been relatively level. The thing is that it shouldn't be, because on the world market, consumption and demand for rice is increasing.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we have so much land here that used to be under rice and is no longer under rice, that we have the potential for growth even without clearing new land. We got to ask the question, why aren't we? Why aren't we making use of that? And why is it that if we are allocating income from oil to help those industries, so hopefully to be building roads along the dams to make more rice fields accessible, to be incentivizing the rice industry in other ways, why is it level after all this time?
Right.
Sugar has demonstrated it is hopeless. And as you know, we live in a county called Demerara, which brown sugar is named after. And a few weeks ago, you couldn't buy brown sugar in the country.
That's right.
That's never happened in my lifetime. It was unbelievable. So you're quite right. You are seeing a decline in the other industries. You got to figure out how to turn it around. And the only way to turn it around is to use that oil money to help the infrastructure that is used in those industries. Otherwise, we're really wasting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also want to make another point. And this is, again, for those out there that are watching the headlines and wondering, well, don't worry, there's going to be a spike here and a spike there, and the numbers will drastically increase. And I go back to gold on this. What has happened, and this I think I'm speaking to a very niche group of medium and small scale miners. What the government has been doing is, because of the lack of interest, because of the lack of investment in the industry, those medium and small scale miners have found it increasingly difficult to ply their trade. So what they're having problems with is road access, equipment, access to labor, etc. And what we're finding now is the numbers are declining because those medium and small scale miners are not being able to produce efficiently and effectively. What the government is doing now, rather than helping the small scale miners, they're bringing in large corporations, international corporations, that are going to dig mass amounts of gold out of the ground just to prop up those numbers in order to say, look at progress. And all during that time, the medium and the small scale miners are going to suffer and going to continue to take a hit, even with gold at the highest it's ever been in history. And we're watching this happen over and over in all the industries, even down to our farming industries. They're talking about our farming is growing exponentially. What they're not saying is that it's 2 or 3 big companies that they've given their friends and family big land to and are producing huge amounts of crops. Again, I don't know why our prices are still what they are if they're producing that much, but I assume it's exported. And the medium and small scale farmers are taking a beating. So we're ending up the word is not elitist, but you're coming up to a situation where the rich are getting richer and the poor and the small and medium scale are falling off to the side in all industries, even construction for that matter. All of them little contractors that get 1 or 2 little roads here, most of them have pulled out now, because building 1 or 2 small roads, even though you feel great to get a $50 million contract, the project can't be successful. It's you got to build 10 roads before you even break even. So those people have already failed. But the big contractors, which is the friends and family, getting the big kickbacks. So the money is not being spread around evenly.
I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with you in terms of a criticism of the large producers. Oma is a good example in the gold industry. Oma saved the economy for many years. There are a couple issues that got to be looked at. First of all, small and medium scale mining by law should be confined to Guyanese citizens only. So we have exclusivity in those areas. If a foreigner wants to come in, they have to be confined to large scale mining, which means a larger initial investment, a larger undertaking, a larger risk, larger rewards, hopefully, and larger production, but also easier scrutiny by the authorities to decide tax issues and declaration of gold production issues and all of that, where a lot of these small and medium scale shops are ducking under the radar. So I'm not sure I agree with you that it should be a policy not to encourage large foreign investors.
No, I didn't say not encourage. I said they're being used to prop up the numbers while the small and medium scale are not being given a fair opportunity or not being given the investment.
I think what needs to be done is there needs to be a more rigorous and careful scrutiny of declarations by those small and medium scale. I know they're under pressure, but I also know they're not helping themselves very often. And I know that our gold production in Guyana has not dropped as the figures you just showed indicate. What's happening is that there's less declaration of gold, but I'm not satisfied that there's less production of gold. So we need to tighten up our system so that there's more accountability, as well as making it easier for the folk to get into the interior, making it easier for them to do their work, and making it easier for them and safer for them to extract and to deal with issues like that. Insofar as agriculture is concerned, I'm satisfied, and this may be the capitalist in me, that if you want agriculture to be profitable as a business, it got to be large scale. So it's all well and good if you have a subsistence farmer who got half an acre of planting that he wants to reap, but when he takes that to market and he got to wait 6 months for the next crop of planting, he is condemned to subsistence level. If he has 100 acres and he's exporting that and rotating it so that he's producing every day and he's at an export level, he then has enough to be buying machinery to grow, to be assured of the income so that he can make investments and borrow money. Farming needs to become a business in Guyana, and our farmers are not businessmen, and that is part of the reason why they're being squeezed. They're not getting help from the Minister of Agriculture. I heard Mustafa say the other day that they want to help by having easy access from farm to market. He's right about that. I heard him criticize the people who are buying the produce on the farms and bringing it out to market. He's right about that, but he didn't present a single solution. So he did recognize the problem. But in terms of a solution, he needs to talk about the education of the farmers so that they know what the demand is in the local market. He needs to talk about easy accessibility, making a port on the Pomeroon River so you can legally export produce from not just from Demerara, but also from the Pomeroon
and Barbies,
making export easier to Trinidad so that a farmer can get to charity from the Pomeroon River and can sell his produce more easily. There needs to be solutions now that the problem has been identified, and I really have not seen solutions coming from our leaders.
I'll tell you, farming is something that I've been involved in for a long time. It's something I've studied. I used to mind chickens, lots and lots of them. And then there were other business ventures that I had looked into. And I started to do a little research of Brazil and Venezuela and, larger countries nearby and what they have been doing. And one of the interesting things I had found was in Venezuela, interestingly enough, where, for example, they had in the rural areas, there was lots of cattle farming. Lots and lots of cattle farming. And it was a very simple situation where these ranches would be many acres. They would have as much cattle as they can fit. But what happened is rather than them having to worry about how they're selling their meat, how they're selling these cows, what the government had done is they had created various abattoirs, government-run abattoirs, in which the government themselves would purchase the cows at market price from all the farmers. So all the farmer had to do was grow the cows, make sure they're healthy, make sure they're up to standard, make sure they're not, disease-ridden, and then get the cows to the abattoir in their area. They would then pay a fair price for their meat, for their cattle, and then they would go right back and continue their business. And it was essentially a consolidation. Some of them were actually co-ops, meaning the various farmers. It didn't have to be the government.
No, I like that as a model, with the one exception. I don't think it should be a co-op, and I don't think the government should run it.
It could be a private entity.
But certainly.
Yeah, by all means.
The government can say to KIAN, if you look in this geographic area, you will see 6 farmers. Each of them got 1,000 head of cattle.
Right.
And therefore, there is a need there. I am giving you this free piece of land nearby. Borrow money, build an abattoir. We will license it. We will license
Make sure it's up to standard. We'll monitor, we'll regulate you.
And we require that your profit margin is no more than 10%. You agree to that because you see where the market is. And therefore, you are already assured that the problem that exists in Guyana now, where at the farm planting is $40 a pound, but by the time it gets to the market, it's over 100. Suddenly that $40 only translates to $60 a pound. Same equivalent with meat. You facilitate the person who is adding value and getting it to the market, to the consumer.
There you go.
But you facilitate him on the condition, contractually, that his markup is restricted.
Correct. It's price control. You can do that.
He is quite happy to do that.
Absolutely. Because he's consistent. He's making his money. He can calculate.
You make him undertake to do that for 5 years. And you know in your mind in 5 years, you are going to be giving somebody
That's right.
Another abattoir there so that they can have the markup. But by then you have competition and free market can work.
Absolutely.
So there are solutions to the problems if it's just thought of.
And that can be for planting, that could be for anything, any crop under the sun, right? And we're watching it, and I'll be honest with you, we are watching a little bit of what they've tried to do with the rice, because that is a similar model. But clearly due to lack of, I would have to say it's so many different areas that the millers are feeling the squeeze on. But at the same time, it's translating back down to the farmers. And we are watching right now we're watching rice price skyrocket, even though, we don't have a problem with production. And you're wondering, well, why is the price raising? Because of what you just said, the lack of regulation and then lack of support to ensuring that these millers can continue to ply their trade in a sustainable manner. Now, I'm definitely not an advocate necessarily for subsidization, but one of the areas, for example, and again, me having been on GRDB, is obviously our research into new crops and our rice being able to adapt to weather conditions and soil conditions that are ever changing here. And what you had to have found recently, the rice that's currently growing, is a group of millers had to leave and go to Brazil. They got the permission to do it because they had big drama in the industry, got the permission to go to Brazil, deal with the scientists in Brazil to come up with a variety that can grow and yield more here. So all of that has had cost implications, right? Yes, they're producing more, but at the same time, they're running into more overheads, right? And I mean, you can touch on fuel cost rising. You can touch on the export taxes that they're paying way too much to send rice out. You can I think they're still paying the government a couple dollars on every ton, which is way more than the rest of the world, right? And there's just a few different areas that are creating a situation where the millers are feeling the squeeze because their production cost is going up, and although the production is going up as well, they're not getting a chance to continue at their same profit margins. So obviously they're raising their prices. That's the natural next step for them. The rice farmers, on the other hand, are getting even more of a squeeze, right? Because they're not being able to, they just kind of stuck with whatever the miller paid. And that's the other side that the miller has to make more money on. So again, you've ended up in a particular situation where the government's regulation in that industry is not sufficient. That's all on an overarching view. But there are methods that can be implemented in order to bring down the cost of rice, bring down the cost of production, and it's just not being done.
It's problematic. One of the things that I would like to see happen, we've discussed this, and I'm not going to talk about all of it here, but one of the things I would like to see happen is that where state land is used for rice, I think it's time to give transport to the people occupying. That's important for so many reasons. It allows people to take ownership. It gives them immediate equity so they can borrow money from the bank to run and expand their business.
Yeah.
And it also then allows the government to come back to the same people to talk about tax and income tax and capital gains tax on sales and allow the system to work. We need to have everybody under the radar. We need to have everybody occupied and gainfully employed or gainfully in business as part of the system, and then paying back their fair due to the state so that things can continue to run.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of anarchy going on right now, I'm afraid.
I know. A lot more for us to discuss, but we are out of time.
Time's up.
Yes, time's up. All right, guys. An interesting, just kind of quick conversation today. I hope that a lot of you have seen that there are solutions to the various problems that we outlined, whether it was road safety today, whether it was, the Dutch disease that is clearly relevant right now with our mid-year report, whether it be the farming woes and the cost of goods that have gone through the roof. There are solutions to these things that have to be explored, and unfortunately at the moment that's not happening, which is why the average Guyanese are feeling the squeeze. But we have a long way to go, and we're hoping that a minority government occurs in 2025 and we can really hold their feet to the fire, and we can ensure that there's some accountability and actual progress for all Guyanese and not just PPP or PNC members.
And we can use that minority government or control in parliament by opposition to put 3 members of the opposition on the GRDB.
There you go.
A matter of law, along with the 3 government appointees and 1 third-party appointee.
Absolutely. Guys, on that note, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Please be safe out there on the roads. We'll be back next week for sure to check you guys out. Thank you once again. Tim, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
And should I throw in a vote, Anouk? No, we are in campaign mode now. Nonetheless, guys, have a wonderful weekend. See you next week. Take care.
Take care.